It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. It's very nice to be back in studio with you today, Freeman and Spence.
It's
good to see you,
nice
too.
to have you back from hot, sunny Bali.
A lot hotter than sunny California.
I'm
So-called
freezing,
sunny California.
man.
Look, I've got a neck thing on.
It's so cold.
Canada
I know.
here.
You know, people in like
Canada.
Wisconsin get really pissed at us when we say it's 41 degrees.
I know we
and we're
get
cold.
we get mail. It says, Jesus, what is with you guys?
You're Canadian. See, this is really shameful. You're complaining about the weather?
This is what happens. You know, we get very thin-skinned. I haven't lived there for an awful long time, and it's crisis time the moment the sun goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey,
We're not helping ourselves much here with this conversation.
we'll evolve it. I want to talk, you know, it's people are laughing at us because every time we come in here, it's an extension of our coffee conversation, which it is. And the
whole show is an extension of our coffee conversation.
Well, that's how it's intended to be.
That's what we did.
Okay. You said something to me this morning. I had posted about the shooting in Connecticut, and I read it to you. You hadn't seen it, and I said, well, have you seen what I said about it? And I read it to you, and you said something very interesting. You kind of admonished me, which is fine. I didn't jump at that. But you said something very interesting. Playing the expert isn't my edge. You said, playing the expert at this point isn't really my edge. And that was a very interesting statement because I personally find the expert to be a place that I rush to, right? I'm aware of this, really based on the conversation we were having. I was like, yeah, I do that. I run to being an expert as opposed to sitting with the discomfort of the not knowing. We even, this show, we talk about the sacred I don't know, and yet it's so hard, especially when feelings are involved. I want to organize my feelings. I want to sort them out. And you made the point, you said, Freeman, then you're in your head. Then you're just operating from your head. And that's not sufficient when something of this magnitude occurs. It's not the right is relative, but it's not the most helpful way to process the experience.
Well, there is so much emotion. There is so very much emotion that comes up for all of us who are witnesses to an event like this, much less those who are unfortunate to have participated in it in some way, to have been touched by it at close range. So much emotion comes in, and it's natural and normal that we seek to comfort and to console, but much of our comforting and our consolation takes the form of talking people out of their experience, or robbing people of the real-time access to their emotions, and it's done in ways that seem, at first blush, to be kind and well-intentioned. And I'm not suggesting that it isn't kind and well-intentioned. It certainly is, but the rush to fix it, or to make it better, or to talk about silver linings, all of these things, it robs people of what they are feeling.
Yeah.
And sometimes it drives their emotions down, or sometimes it can frustrate, it can make people feel unseen or unheard. But particularly for those of us who are witnesses, it drives us up into our heads. We start looking for silver linings, and we do platitudes as if whatever, I've heard things from various pundits, things like, well, now maybe we can finally address this issue or that issue, or and lots of talk about silver linings, as if the loss of one hair on one child's head is worth any of it.
No.
They are unconnected. We tend to want to connect these things. If I certainly agree that it is time to have those kinds of conversations, but they are unconnected to these tragic events. They're separate ideas, and when we conflate these things, we diminish what is real, what is deep, what is true, and that is the dignity of being human and respecting our humanity. And a big chunk of that has to do with how willing we are, how available we are to the experience of our emotional life.
And it's messy. It's messy and it's upsetting, and
life is messy.
It is. And even so, this is interesting too, because I was saying about upset landing places, the tendency to move towards blame. And you said something where you said that's part of the process. Developmentally, it's part of the process as we're growing, but also just in this moment of the sort of chaotic nature of all these feelings, all these threads coming up at one time. Even that is something that we need to, in a way, hold. That there's
it's a crisis.
It's a crisis.
And
feelings
crisis,
are dynamic too. There's so many flowing.
Feelings are dynamic.
Yeah.
But in it, what makes a crisis, what a crisis is to my personal experience, are developments that happen at such a rate, such a frequency, at such a pace, and with such a depth of complexity that they overwhelm my habitual, my ability, my comfort zone.
Yeah, your coping stuff.
Vis-a-vis my coping skills.
Yeah.
And it's almost as though the banks of the river overflow.
Absolutely.
And it's not helpful for me to try and contain the banks of the river. I just have to, and I'm learning this in real time, to go with the enormity of the wash of it.
We need to find a feeler right now. We need to bring on someone who is a feeler, who can help us sort through this in a way that allows all of us the dignity of the humanity in this. So let's bring on a guest.
Well, I am really, really thrilled to have my dear friend Bill Bauman with us today. Bill has been a Catholic priest as well as a religious science minister. He's a licensed psychologist with a specialty in deep psychotherapy. He's consulted in diverse settings. He's a businessman. He's owned and operated a number of businesses and nonprofits, including the World Peace Institute in Washington, D.C., and he is currently the co-founder for the Center for Soulful Living. Bill Bauman is joining us today from Las Vegas, and we are very, very grateful to have you with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Wow, thank you, Barnett, and thank you, Freeman. I've just been listening to this conversation, and I just, I shudder to introduce something even a bit humorous in the middle of such a deep and sacred conversation. But I must admit that what you've both been talking about and what Barnett has said is the first time I've ever agreed with anything he's ever said. And I shudder and am ashamed to admit it.
We forgive you. It's okay. You can agree with Barnett just once or twice.
Yeah, and while we're...
I warned you, Bill.
Try to keep that back if you don't mind.
I warned you because in the last segment, when you're not here, we get to talk behind your back.
That's right. I forgot that. So I shouldn't say the next thing I was thinking of saying, and that's about you, Freeman. I want to tell all your listeners the one thing I hate about you already, even though I've just met you, and that is you've got that radio voice that I always wanted to have.
Oh,
yeah. Tell me about it. We'll talk about that later.
So just know that I'm in deep pain.
Yeah. Well, you got your envy out there. That's good. That's healthy.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm feeling it big.
That's it. So wait, let's talk. Let's talk about how. Go ahead.
Now we can get back to the more serious thing. You introduced me as a feeler, and I certainly am that. So invite me into the conversation in whatever way.
Yeah. No, this is it. So. There's this rush to try to figure out how one is meant to feel. I mean, I know I experienced that as soon as the news came of the event. There was a rush to determine, well, how do I feel right now? Mm-hmm. And what Barnett and I were sort of introducing is that feelings are dynamic. So moment to moment, instant to instant, the feelings are kind of, they're going to be different. They're going to be lots of different ways of feeling. And the tendency that at least I'm witnessing in the media is the feelings are organizing around, positions and whatnot, which, at least from my experience, isn't necessarily helpful. So, I would ask of you, help us unwind the grieving process and I even shudder to say making sense of, because that's not really realistic, but something that we can move towards that's going to be helpful in this situation.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I really am so honored to be a part of this conversation and to be with everybody who's listening in this particular moment. This is not just a trying time. It's a time that, as you both said, calls us into deep grieving, deep pain, and forces us to face the conundrum of human living. And that's really where I live a lot. So a lot of my feeling, being introduced as the feeler, is around the whole gray area of being a human being. So let me take the word grieving, which we're all doing, and we're grieving in all sorts of ways. So I feel like we grieve in lots of places in our being. We grieve in the mind, the conscious mind, where we try to categorize things and label things. We grieve in our heart. We grieve in our body. We grieve in our cells. We grieve in our soul. And we grieve in lots of other places. We grieve in our emotions. And so when I feel into the word feeling, because grieving is a feeling, I try to let myself feel in all those places, not just feel the emotion, but feel the feelings of my heart, feel the feelings of my soul, feel the feelings of my mind, feel the feelings of my absolutely flabbergasted, unable to compartmentalize or put into little pegs or slots what's going on. Just all the ways I try to feel the scream of humanity in my own unconscious as it screams there, as it does in the unconscious of every one of us, and on and on and on. So to me, when I give myself permission to feel, as you both said, I give myself permission not just to be the human being I am, but to be the human being we all are. And I think when something like this Connecticut shooting happens, especially when it happens to young, beautiful, innocent children, it grips us in a way that has no explanation. And as you say, we're trying to position ourselves, take positions, and even if we don't do that verbally or externally, we try to do that in our mind. And yet this is something that will not categorize. It's like our mind has to say, I can't explain it away. And so I have to face it. Now, that's a choice. I don't think we have to face it. I don't think we have to feel. But if we're about, what's the name of this, cutting-edge consciousness, if we're about calling ourselves to the extreme limits of who we are and what we're capable of as human beings in our consciousness, then to feel the pain, to feel the injustice, to feel the tragedy, to feel the primal scream that comes up from every human being, that comes up from those parents of those children, that comes up from the unexplainable suffering of life, to me is, and I'm going to shift my language, is sacred.
Yeah.
And to me, we're all big not just on what's psychological, but what's spiritual as well. To me, I can't be spiritual unless I see, feel, experience the sacredness of the pits and the depths of the human experience.
And this is the point that Barnett, I think, was making this morning when he said, I have learned to take comfort in playing the expert, but the challenge is to move towards the mystery. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Barnett, but it was of that nature that you were speaking to this issue.
Absolutely. I'm so aware of the part of myself that feels very comfortable, very safe, when I pretend to myself that I know the answers. Mm-hmm. It is a control mechanism. It's an adaptive strategy to meet the challenges of a full and messy and dynamic life.
And mysterious. That element where there's an element where I don't know becomes sacred.
Yes, and when we fool ourselves into thinking we know or we have answers, or we can console ourselves or others by anything more than the presence that we give to ourselves and to others. When we fill that space with anything besides presence, then we are inserting ourselves between what we know and who we are and the mystery. And that might be as close as anything that I can put together as that sounds like sin. What might have been an origin of this whole notion of sin, when you come between who we know ourselves, are discovering ourselves to be, and the mystery of the divine. When you insert ego in between, I think that is all wrapped up in some early idea of sin.
Wow, that was beautiful. If I may insert my own approach into that, just to ride on what you're saying, Barnett, I feel, go back to the word expert. I feel like the one thing I'm an expert in is the mystery, and is what I tend to call ignorance. For me, I have just gotten to the point where I just will not go to my conscious, rational mind for any serious philosophical or human issue. So to me, what I do is I take what's there, and I just let myself, back to you, I let myself feel it. I let myself become it. And I think everybody who's listening here knows we can feel something, and we can all stop at a certain point of feeling. But, like, for example, I can feel the pain and tragedy, and I can just stay right in that pain and tragedy. But for me, what I do is I just stay with the pain and tragedy feeling until it feels like it's complete within me, and then it moves me somewhere else. It moves me deeper into itself. And I feel like way down in the middle of pain, way down in the middle of conundrum, way down in the middle of mystery, there's some gem. Now, it may not be a truth. It may not be something we can verbalize and all feel good about, but there's some truth about creation. There's a truth about living. There's a truth about being human. And for me, I'm never satisfied till I move through, feel every aspect of whatever's painful, until it leads me to its little gem right in the middle of itself. And again, a gem that can barely be translated, but can be felt. And so somehow at that point, like with this, I feel like at that point, then I feel like I am one with every one of those children and adults who got murdered. I'm one with every parent. I'm one with the conscience of and the soul of the nation, if you will, or of the world. And there's somewhere in there where we meet. I think we meet as human beings at that place that we usually call the unconscious, where we are the human family, and where we are holding each other and ourselves in the sacred, unknowable mystery. And there's the point at which I think healing happens for all of us, not just for me, but for everyone.
You know, it's interesting. Barnett and I were on a show, Saturday we were on a show, and we were talking about this show, the cutting edge consciousness, the idea of our own edge, and where there's the commitment to continue to go to the edge. We spoke about it in terms of being real, and then more real, and then more real, and how it's revealed to us in large measure just by being willing to, I don't know, again, step in the mystery or sit in the discomfort or some combination of both. I want to talk more about that. We need to take a quick break, though. So when we come back, I want to go into this, the real and the more real and the mystery, because I feel like this is a rich topic and a fertile topic, especially in this moment in time. But we need to pay a few bills. So we'll be right back after these messages. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
This is Barnett here with Freeman and our guest Bill Bauman. You're listening to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Before the break, we were talking about the realness that we begin to touch. We become closer and closer to that within us, which seems to be more. as we allow ourselves access to the deeper and deeper feelings. And someplace, I think, in that realness, we begin to approach the idea that exists in every tradition, this idea of the oneness. And in that way, it may just be that to the degree, the extent, and the willingness with which we are courageous enough to experience our own feelings, whether they're joyful or, in this case, grief, our own grief.
Or anger or sadness.
Or anger,
whatever.
whatever it is. The degree to which we are willing to tap those feelings in some way dissipates the sum of grief in the world. And I believe that.
That's
it's not
beautiful.
it's an idea that is certainly very real to me, but I know it exists in many traditions. It certainly exists in the Buddhist culture, and I believe also that when we look to the central Christian idea of Jesus' suffering for the sins of mankind, that is a reference for a capacity that each and every one of us has access to. And Bill, as a theologian and as a mystic, I would love to hear your response to that.
Yeah, I would love to give it. First, I want to say I was thinking earlier this morning, a couple hours ago, knowing I was going to be spending this time with you. I just kind of opened up to the question. I didn't even ask it; it just sort of appeared. What is it that I like about Barnet? And of course, now Barnet, I would never give you a compliment to your face, so you can ignore this. But
I'll listen. On behalf of Barnet, I'll listen.
From my depths was realness. Like, I think we all have this sort of subconscious test we put everybody through. We would never admit it, but like somebody has to pass our test before we say they're okay, and I'll let them be my friend and that kind of thing. And I've looked over the years, and what's my subconscious test? And it really is realness. It's like if somebody's real, I don't care what they believe, what their theories are, what they do. I don't care anything about them, what their personality traits are. But if they're real, if they're somehow in the depth of themselves in life, I just love them. And so, that's why nobody else loves Barnet, but I happen to love him because of that realness.
It's nice to know he has one friend, Bill. That's beautiful. You're really kind. You're a generous man.
Hey, it's for you, really.
Thank God. I'll take my friend wherever I can find him, even if I have to go to Las Vegas for him.
Right.
That's right. So this thing of realness makes a huge difference to me, and then I'm going to link it to oneness because, as you say, I hang out in a quite mystical space. But the mystical space I hang out in is not just the divine, the infinite, the light field, the realm of if you will, transcendent oneness. But it's all of that lives right in our gut and right in the middle of the earth and right in the middle of the mud and right in the middle of the dualistic stuff of humanness. So to me, unless one can really find divinity and freedom and oneness, etc., in the middle of our worst human nightmare, then I don't know, one hasn't fully gotten to the edge of that cutting edge consciousness that this show is all about. So to me, I look at like this tragedy that we're using as a platform for our conversation, and I say to myself, okay, if I'm going to be present to this tragedy, these children, those parents, this community, the American people, and the whole world, in a way that makes some difference, in a way where my presence, my consciousness, my way of being present to all of this can have some benefit, what is that? And to me, it's being real with it, being with every element of the realness or reality of what it is, all the way from, as we were talking about before, all the way from from feeling the huge suffering of it all.
And then we're not in a head trip. Then we're not. This is, we've talked about this before several times. Giving up enlightenment for enrealment. That there's a quality in being fully present to whatever's coming up. And consciousness, from the perspective we've talked about it, is a capacity to hold it all. A capacity for us, and this again is language, Bill, that you may not have heard us using, but integrated, or integrity, forgive me, integrity means integrated, that there's a sense that we're trustworthy to ourselves and others because we can handle complexity. We can handle, we call it dynamic complexity. So things are always changing, and there's a space or a capacity within us to be able to handle that.
Yeah, beautifully said, beautifully said. And my feel is that we do this together as a human family, or as an American family, or as a Connecticut family, or as a community family, and all of the above. And so for me, it's like I go to that place where my individuality starts to mesh with, merge with, become unified with the consciousness, the personality of the human family. And so if I'm going to be a contributor, then back to our word realness, integrity, all those words that just make total sense to me, then that's where I show up. And I show up, again, not with platitudes, and not with mindsets, and not with beliefs about it, and not even with values about it. If I'm operating out of values like this is good, that's bad, I tend to use that as a barrier to going to where the action really is. So if I'm going to be healing for people, even at the unconscious level, before I open my mouth or make a phone call or anything, and if I'm going to be present to people in a way where my caring, my love, my embrace makes some difference as a contributor to the all and to our collective human kind of moving forth from this into some bigger space where we can all hold it in a bigger way, then the way I feel like I can do that is I can go right to the depth, to the unanswerable pain and suffering, and to the, now I'm going to use another word, to the wisdom that the conscious mind can never get to because it's too dualistically oriented. The wisdom of that event, the wisdom of that tragedy. Now, if this were any other show, I would never use a word like wisdom in the middle of that because it would be misinterpreted to be an excuse to write off what's happening.
Well, this is what Barnett was talking about, and in fact, the whole with the consciousness, Bill, that you're talking about includes the part of us that has the propensity to rush to expert. Barnett and I call it premature transcendence syndrome, PTS. And we have to be the first to raise our hands and go, I have a tendency to do this. This is my coping. And that, again, Barnett, that's got to be included in this whole way of understanding. There's a level of realness in our, unrealness. There's a paradox in everything. We have to be able to see the dimensionality of things.
Yeah, and even, I'd love your language, even to take that paradox, and realize, I realize for myself, every time I open my mouth and say something, the exact opposite is equally true.
There you go.
And that's the paradox of life, I think. So to me, it's all gray, it's all conundrum, it's all mystery, and to be willing to float around in total unknowingness, total mystery, and feel what that's like. And then for me, that those feelings have gone through some stages, like stages of grief, for example. This is stages of living in mystery. The first is huge terror and fear, because there's no handle to grab onto. There's no security or safety. Then after I get used to that, then it's like just lostness, feeling like there's not just no handle, but there's no identity, because like who am I really if there's just an I that's floating in nowhereness and emptiness and non-definableness, like who am I? Then I let go of that, and all of this for me has taken years, but then I let go of that, and then I sink into a place where, for lack of better words, I cease to exist. And now here's the conundrum, and here's the irony of that: the me that is experiencing that I cease to exist, that I no longer am. So you note the dualistic ridiculousness of the statement, all of a sudden, bit by bit, starts to feeling like, wow, if I don't really exist, if we don't exist, if it all really is illusion, as the ancient spiritualities of the East say, then what's there? In the middle of that nothingness, there's, for me, number one, there's a freedom. Like, I don't have to defend anything. I don't have to represent anything. I just am, and I amped, meaning I am not. I exist and I don't exist. And somewhere right about that place, that little point, that invisible point where existence meets non-existence, life meets death, where we teeter between creation and non-creation, time and space, and pre-creative nothingness, right in that space in us, when I'm there, ironically, everything makes sense. Everything makes sense, not in a way that makes sense to the rational mind, but in a way that makes sense to every other part of me. Every other element, every cell and atom in my being kind of wakes up right there at that place where it's just that right at the beginning of that big bang of existence, which is the centerpiece of every one of us, where it's like somehow, for me, and this is magical language, that's where I start to celebrate the human experience.
I love it.
Then I take tragedy like this, and in some absolutely ironic, incomprehensible way, I can experience the wonder of human living through the life force that's being imploded, exploded.
The soulfulness.
And lived. I'm sorry, say that again?
The soulfulness.
The soulfulness, yes. Yeah. Oh, I love that word better. Yeah. And the soulfulness of it all, and that to me is where all of us as human beings go. We live there. And so I look at, even the whole 2012 mythology from the Mayan calendar and all of that, and creating a whole new level of consciousness. To whatever degree one wants to go with the theory, where I'm at with that is we're at a moment where more and more of us are aware that we all meet at some deep, deep, deep place. I'm calling it the unconscious, where possibility of creation, etc. And what's great about this conversation to me, and what's impressive and touching about events like the Connecticut shooting to me, is that they invite us. They invite us to go to that place. The whole 9/11 Twin Towers event, and the whole last 4 or 5 years of the recession, they invite us to go to this place where, if we can push through and feel fully every experience, every feeling, and let it take us to its own ultimate space, we have found the place in the human experience where it all makes sense, not rational.
This is I think, orienting toward the heart of the matter. You're speaking of this, these glimpses of soulfulness, that we manage to move beyond the tyranny of logical thinking and constant processing through reason, constant relating to the world through mental function. Not to say that we abandon that, but to be able to see the bigger picture without losing sight of the current picture, to be able to hold that in balance.
Well, there's a trustworthiness in the depth and dimensionality. I mean, when someone shows up with a kind of, what's the language? Or when I show up, I should say it this way. In other words, we go back to the idea that consciousness is the capacity to hold the depth and the dimensionality of all this. That piece is not only freeing for me as an individual, it creates space for others around me.
Well, maybe it's not about us holding it in that way. Maybe it is. There's a distinction, I think, that has to do with reacting to a situation and responding to
Absolutely.
it. And
Absolutely.
the highest bar that I can relate to is being able to is wanting to respond to a situation from the edges of who I know myself to be.
Do you know? Go ahead.
And that involves moving beyond the logical, reasoning, critical function into, as you described, Bill, this sort of the dirt and substance, the glorious matter of being alive, the unknowable mystery of being alive, and this kind of soulful oneness wherein the mystery shows itself in these times, in times of either incredible jubilation or incredible pain. We experience something of what is more real and true about ourselves.
I have to respond. I have to respond to the clock.
Oh.
I'm sorry, you guys. The challenge when we start getting into the depth and the complexity.
We need to go back to management. We need 2 hours.
That's right. We need them to expand our show to 2 hours. Bill, I am feeling very certain that you'll be back on this show.
Oh.
And I'm hoping that will be when you're in the Los Angeles area so that you're sitting with us because,
That would be a delight.
yeah, the opportunity to feel our way through this is more than it's going to happen. So, listen. Before we let you go, I want to give folks websites. Your books. I know there are several, and the things you're working on. Where can I send folks to get more of Bill Bauman?
Oh, well, how kind of you. Thank you, Freeman. Yeah, I have a website. It's a very creative one. It's under my name, which is www.billbauman, BILLBAUMAN.net.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And for those of you listening,
You can also reach, by the way, excuse me.
Go ahead.
You can reach Bill on our Cutting Edge Consciousness site. We will have that information there as well.
Absolutely. And for those of you listening, stay tuned because we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain. Wow.
Well, let's talk about him behind his back.
This full feeling, full body experience of the tragedies in Connecticut, really allowing ourselves to be in a state of hurt and confusion and all that comes up with, being fully present, as Bill was saying, present in a way that's an offer. I'm willing to feel this. And you mentioned this as well, because, that's, I think, what this moment in time, the opportunity, from my perspective, is to feel it fully and to allow ourselves to be changed by it. That is where change occurs.
However it is that we are changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched the ceremony the other night, the memorial the other night, and it was incredibly moving because there is so much power in the shared emotion, in the shared grief.
Yeah.
And there's something about a community that allows us to more deeply experience whatever it is that is there, that is coming up for us to experience. And so watching people on camera in that community holding each other and hugging each other and simply being with each other, particularly when they're doing so quietly.
Yeah.
It's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And as I said at the beginning of the show, the flip side of that, which doesn't seem to be as helpful, are some of the pundits that I've heard, and some of the sometimes I've seen people attempt to make it better, or to find silver linings, or to hook it up.
Well, it's
to
cutting
other
it's cutting
events.
off the feelings. I mean, this rush to fix it. I mean, I have that tendency. So again, as the world is a mirror, I see it reflected back to me in the the tendency to want to rush in and fix it, to say something that'll make people feel better. They're not supposed to feel better. I mean, I'm outing myself. Even that first post that I put up on Facebook was a rush to say, as you put it, the let me play the expert because there's comfort in that role, versus allowing for the complexity of all these feelings to come up and not rushing in and trying to fix it.
Yeah, it's so messy. We did a show. It's so messy, and we did a show some time back. I think it was called Battlefield Poets.
Yeah.
And we should dig that out and repost that. It had to do with the realness, the authenticity that comes in these extraordinarily challenging circumstances that collapse everything about how we approach life, that just blow away all of our conditions, all of our habits.
That's it.
All of
our self-perception. I mean, the whole thing of the Battlefield Poets is the genius in that comes out of these men that often have like a 4th or 5th grade education, and yet their language and the wording is coming through them in a way that their construct has been broken down. Mm-hmm. And often we experience a breakthrough once there's a breakdown because we hold this together too tightly. We see
this even now. There is genius in the capacity, in the loving. There's a genius in the loving that we see on our television screens and in the radio. The care, the genius that we have as human beings to care for each other, to relate to each other, to be mirrors for each other.
There's the oneness.
There's
the breakdown of the separation.
That oneness where we allow ourselves to experience what is going on for another.
Yeah,
that is such poetry.
That's so soulful, and
that is so soulful.
And it's so sacred.
As we said, the soul shows itself in these times of extraordinary stress and pain. It also shows itself in times of great joy. Right. Now, that's not to say that the soul is not present in the great in-betweens,
right.
But it is in the great in-betweens that our desire to control and to be mental and to be strategic or to be experts, in the parlance of what we're talking about today, interferes. It gets in the middle. Our egos get in between the mystery and who we can really be.
And I love that you said that's the sin. And sin, I mean, the word itself, and I think this has been mentioned before, is an archery term which means to miss the mark, to miss the opportunity to be more fully alive, to go towards something. And again, when we crunch it down to bad or good, we miss the greater opportunity. And that all of us have within us these tendencies towards something that's less than the potential. That is included. That's included. So, we've made a commitment here on this show to go to the edge, to out ourselves, to be as human as we can possibly be in service to something that wants to come through me. Going back to Battlefield Poets, again, that breaking down of the construct is a sacred experience where something yet unknown can emerge through that. And collectively, that's the larger opportunity in fully feeling as messy as it gets.
As a guy who is pretty smart, has operated relying on that for almost 60 years. I know firsthand that what is my personal edge is not to be found there. And that what makes me most fully alive and present to be a witness for events without armoring myself off from them is not to be found in my critical thinking. I'm not saying, as I said earlier, I'm not saying I'm not willing to abandon my critical thinking, but I am relegating it to a different position of authority in my life. Oh. There is a much bigger picture than can be known by my critical thinking.
Well, and so look, the openness to recognize the limitations. I mean, how many ways in my own life do I get to see where my desire to control it vis-a-vis logic and reason, to figure it out, to sort it out, to give the answer is robbing me of the opportunity that, again, the mystery allows for. Let me just sit in the discomfort. Let me train myself to practice not knowing, so I'm not so quick to move into that space, because it's a disservice to myself and those I love.
And to others.
That's my point.
And there is a time, and there will be a time, to do the sweep up. There is a time to do to engage the mental function and to go down the checklist and to do what is necessary, and to have the dialogues and to have the discussions and to take the actions that are necessary. There are times for those kinds of implementations. They have been elevated in our past experience. Mm. They have been elevated to such a degree that they trump everything else. Yeah. And I think what we're talking about here, it begins in our own hearts as individuals, we each individually make the choice to shift the axis, to shift the poles from being head-driven to being heart-driven. From coming, it just is a redress of the balance.
I was going to say balance. At the very least, a rebalancing so that there's a fullness and a depth to my experience. It's a full body experience. It's no longer just my body carrying my head around. It's an opportunity to be more present and more real, ultimately more trustworthy in myself and others, more available. And that's the gooey good stuff. That's what makes the whole thing, in my experience, worth doing.
Absolutely. So you have a little bit of a dramatic, very dramatic FM voice there, or is it just a cold coming on?
No, let's go with the first interpretation.
Are we moving from AM dial to the FM dial?
If I can keep,
are you trying to tell me something?
Going, maybe we'll make it.
Maybe you're trying to suggest something.
No, I may be coming down with a bit of something, but we're not going to go too far into that because I don't want to feed that one.
Yeah,
hey,
we have a big event,
so we got to talk about it. So, Birth 2012, as our guest mentioned, is today. For those of you listening on Unity FM, it is today, Friday, December 21st. We are part of an incredible Birth 2012 celebration.
And this show will be broadcasting live from that event, and we have many hours of broadcasts lined up for you.
Incredible guests.
Incredible guests.
Unbelievable.
Like?
Such as... we have Michael Beckwith. We have Lisa Nichols.
She's a good one.
Yeah, we have Marcia Weeder.
She's a good one.
We have some beautiful segments, conscious relationships with Gay and Katie Hendricks. Let's see what else. We have a music piece, The Transformational Quality of Music with Freddie Ravel and Ricky Byers-Beckwith. Boy, there's more.
There's a lot of hours of cutting-edge consciousness.
Lou Gossett.
Radio.
We have Lou Gossett and Tina Lifford. Some amazing actresses talking about the big lies that we buy into. Look, it's going to be powerful. I invite you all. If this is
We're putting together the cutting-edge consciousness treasury. It's like, those things that they are always constantly in the middle of the night. There's constantly this country music treasury.
Lifetime, Life magazine greatest hits album.
I'm just planting that seed.
It'll be the greatest hits album. So we want to invite you. This is going to be, we're going to be coming to you live from the Agape Spiritual Center in Los Angeles, vis-a-vis the Shift Network. The Shift Network is sponsoring the Birth 2012 celebration. We invite you to tune in. So you can go to the Birth 2012 website, which is birth2012.com. You can check us out there. All of this, by the way, will also be going up on our Facebook page. So if you have never been to our Facebook page, get there.
Get there. Like us. We like to be liked. I never tire of reminding you. Check out, please, our friends at the OWN Network.
Oh, right, our
Super Soul Sunday. So
friends.
check out that,
and by all means tune in. Listen, I want to cover a couple other pieces too of the celebration. Once we do this, we're also going to have, as you were mentioning, kind of a library going up. So we know that the Unity station will be covering some of that, and we also know that it'll go up on Birth 2012. So even though they're going to do clips live, and I think the full segments will be at a Power Me TV. If that's not accurate, there will be ways to access the full segments. So
some of that will be here on KBTA and KKZZAM.
Yep, we'll be able to rebroadcast parts of the conversation here. But what I invite you to do, sort of most of all, is visit the Cutting Edge Consciousness website and become part of our community. We promise we won't send you lots of stuff. We don't. We really just send you the most important stuff in terms of where we're going to be and what's coming up lately. So again, a couple places where you can get the information, but also join the community. So Facebook page we love. That's a great way to get information. But the most valuable resource is to go to Cutting Edge Consciousness, www.cuttingedgeconsciousness.com. It says join our community. You can put your email address in there. We don't share that. That is only for our internal use to share.
And we'll send you some gifts.
We'll send you some gifts.
We will. We'll send you some gifts.
What do we say? No, I'm just kidding. We'll figure that out. Yeah, we do.
No, we
have your ebook and we have some other things. That's right.
A new book of mine. We have a book of Freeman's, and we'll send you some gifts.
Yeah, we'll send you some gifts. So again, thanks for tuning in. We invite you to come back again and again and again, and we especially invite you today to click over, find some of that stuff. It's today and tomorrow, Friday and Saturday, 21 and 22 of December, and enjoy the content. Thanks for listening.